everyone is inspired to become an entrepreneur, become an owner of a startup. Who's going to do all the other jobs? Has always been my question.
I always describe it the way that's not all of your fingers are the same height. So you always have different people thinking differently. So it's not a job that you start at 8 o'clock in the morning and you finish at 5. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours in order to make it successful. Startups is the blood of the economy. The takeaway is think globally, act locally. So act as a local player, but think globally that you're going everywhere. Since 2011, Switzerland was rated as #1 innovative country.
Switzerland and what you're famous for? Chocolates, watches, and banks. These are the three things that come to mind.
Chocolate first.
Chocolates first. Yes, definitely. Assalamualaikum dan terima kasih kerana kembali bersama kami dalam We Hear You. Dalam episod kali ini kita akan bawakan anjakan yang bermula dari asas pendidikan. Dan di situlah sebenarnya kita melakukan segala perubahan dalam hidup kita. Apabila kita ke bangku sekolah, kita buat pertama kali didedahkan dengan konsep pembelajaran. Bagaimana ia berbeza jika dibandingkan dengan negara-negara yang dikatakan sudah mencapai tahap negara maju? Kita bawakan contoh daripada University of Applied Sciences, North Switzerland. Dan kita akan bincangkan bagaimana konsep-konsep yang digunakan di sana telah berjaya untuk menghasilkan satu pembudayaan dalam masyarakat setempat. Dengan itu, saya bersama dengan Profesor Dr. Mahmoud yang telah sudi untuk bersama kami. You've come a long way, sir, to join us. Thank you very much for taking up the offer to be on the podcast.
Thank you very much for hosting us. Thank you.
So, the university that you represent has a very strong learning culture, and that's been developed and also made famous throughout Europe. Can you tell us a bit about why this culture has become so prominent in the local startup community?
Thank you very much. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think the selling point and the most important part we do in the University of Applied Science is to apply science. So if we talk about startups and we're talking about businesses going into a market and venture capitalist, we try to focus on industry and applied application. So it's not only theoretical application, which is traditional university only doing. This is why we call the University of Applied Science. And for startup businesses, this is crucial point. So you're not, when you hit reality or you face reality, you're not facing reality with theoretical knowledge, but lacking the application. Throughout your learning experience, we try to prepare our students, our startups, that the reality is different than theories. And we try to combine the two so they get the knowledge they need from theoretical, the theoretical knowledge they need, combined with practical applications.
So on that note, who are the lecturers, who are the professors, such as yourself? Are you also from the startup nucleus community, or have you had your hand in business?
Yes. I started my career as an academic in the UK. This is my first career, and in 2012 I decided to start up my own company, and that was in the packaging industry. And we started a company called British Foamy Group, and we produced a packaging material, food packaging material, and became the largest, third largest packaging company in Europe.
Wow.
And that came in 2015. We were approached by venture capitalists, and we completed a management buyout in 2018. And during that time, I never left academia. Even though I was running, I'm a managing director of the company, I kept a foot in academia. I was flying to Switzerland to teach and coming back, because education is in the heart of what I do. So everything was related to education, and what I learned from education, I managed to apply it. And that was a very successful case study, if you like. And that was something that I always feel very proud of. And most of our professors, they coming from industry. So you will not get the title of a professor unless if you have at least 5 years practical experience in industries. So it's not at traditional university that you do publications only and you become a professor. In the University of Applied Science, it's a requirement to become a professor after when you have acquired some practical experience.
So that has to be a requirement, I think, for modern learning and teaching. Because if we're training students to be entrepreneurs, to take up the challenge of being entrepreneurs, they can't learn from pure academicians, so to speak. We've had a guest on the show just recently talk about how our education system here in Malaysia actually trains us to become 9 to 5 employees. It is from the get-go, from standard 1 right up to form 5, which is about from 7 to 17. The basic structure of the system is the same, and there's a heavy emphasis on one-way teaching and regurgitation of knowledge learned. So there's not much room for innovation, not much room for applying creativity in the context of a student expressing what he's learned or she's learned. Talk to us about how this is different in Switzerland, even at the base level for young children.
I think in Switzerland, what we have done very successfully is combining the different stakeholders. What we realized in the past 10 years that we have lots of good practices. Basically, they were operating excellently in their own fields. But what we did very well in Switzerland, combining the different stakeholders to complete the ecosystem, if you like, we call it the ecosystem, that bringing all stakeholders together to get the maximum and out of what we have. So basically, since 2011, Switzerland was rated as #1 innovative country, and it's always been the first as innovation index in the world. So, and that didn't come from thin air. That came after many years of experience and understanding the environment we operating in, and realizing the needs that startups requires, and this is where we managed to combine the different ecosystems and the different stakeholders to provide startups with the best support mechanism to flourish in the market.
I don't think we have this problem yet, but ideally speaking, if everyone is inspired to become an entrepreneur, become an owner of a startup, who's going to do all the other jobs? Has always been my question. But evidently, we haven't reached the state of asking that question yet. But I would just like to find out from an academician's point of view, if everyone's so inspired to start up their own companies and businesses, there will be a lot of other jobs left unattended.
Yeah. I think this is. I always describe it the way that's not all of your fingers are the same height. So you always have different people thinking differently. There are some people with risk averse. They don't like to take. Being an entrepreneur is high risk.
Very much.
It's you basically what you do, you are putting all your stakes at risk when you start the business. You dedicated your life and time and everything for the business. So it's not a job that you start at 8 o'clock in the morning and you finish at 5. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours. In order to make it successful. There always you find people who would think, but I like the idea, but this is not exactly what I would like to do, and I would like to have a good work-life balance. And this is where the 5 days a week with a proper job, that's a regular job, kicks in. So we always find people who have the ambition to go into the entrepreneurial field, and we will have people who will do the other jobs. I don't think we will be short of this. I think there'll always be people that will be interested in being risk averse.
All right, just thought I'd put it out there. When we talk about the success rate of countries per se, sometimes the measurement, the yardstick is the innovation index. Sometimes the yardstick is the number of unicorns that the country produces. So Malaysia has been trying very hard to surpass the number of unicorns we produce. And when we look at countries of similar size in terms of population in Europe, For example, Sweden, I think, has 30 unicorns or something like that. And Switzerland, I'm sure, has about 20 unicorns. So these are huge successes despite the size of the population in those countries. When you juxtapose that to a country like Malaysia, 34 million people, we have had, I think, 2 or 3 unicorns only. And we're still looking for the next unicorn. How do you measure the success of a country in terms of growth, in terms of business? What is your yardstick?
I think in terms of startups is the blood of the economy. I think with the startups, with small businesses, this is the majority of where's the economic activities comes in and kicks in. It is important not to forget that unicorn is a process. So depends which industry you are in. Like, for example, if we're talking about today's age, everybody is jumping into artificial intelligence, and that's the big topic, the daily topic. But is that the only even innovation that we are doing? Of course not. There are many other innovation, but at the moment we are driven by AI. There is lots of room for developments. Will all the companies be a unicorn? That's I don't think so. I don't think so. The more the competition, the less likely that companies will go. But what differentiate companies is the innovation and meeting the market demand. So these two important elements that should be met in order to become and expand, and finding the large volume market. You need the market for it. So it's not always just measure startups with unicorn, but I think it's a process, and it takes time. But understanding the market is also, and meeting the demand of the market is very important.
The global marketplace is very dynamic. It's become very connected over the years. Despite challenges that may exist in pockets of conflict around the world, there is a general consensus that the world is moving towards a more connected society, a global society, and we're all increasingly thinking in the same way. I think we've never met, but we can have this conversation. That's proof that there's this global citizenship that exists in the world today. For Malaysians hoping to capitalize on this, having spent some time here, what are some of the takeaways that you can share with aspiring entrepreneurs who are Malaysian looking to capture that global market? Because the Malaysian marketplace may be 34 million people strong, ASEAN maybe 600 million people strong. But if we're looking in terms of a global marketplace, I'm sure there's a shift in mindset that's required.
Definitely. I think one of the most important part of this is to think globally, act locally. I think in terms of Malaysia, I think that if we're talking about the ASEAN, a huge market, still you have the potential, the standard of living going up. But surely if you move from Malaysia to Indonesia or to any other Asian country or even to Europe, you need to understand the culture of the country. You cannot do the business exactly how you do it in Malaysia. And to be empowered with the knowledge and experience on understanding the culture is very important. So the takeaway is think globally, act locally. So act as a local player, but think globally that you're going everywhere.
That is truly something that I think we've heard before. But putting those feelers out to understand culture can be difficult. And it is also a process in its own right. How much time should entrepreneurs spend studying markets, putting out feelers, doing their surveys? How much time should be spent in this phase of the business as opposed to the actual doing of the business?
I think this is a very tricky question because it depends on the type of business. Lots of businesses are using technology these days, and technology, you just need to roll it out as much less. But if you're selling a product, not a service, you need to understand the culture more, and you need to have a different mechanism in expanding to a different countries. And this will make things different. and challenging sometimes to startups, because the time invested to understand the culture is not easy, but depends also how much risk you are willing to take when you go abroad. Which kind of internationalization strategy you will adopt. Will you act with a local player, or would you like to open your own subsidiaries and bring your own people, or would you like to rely on locals to expand your venture? So there are many things that needs to be taken on into account, and depends on the company's strategy. I think this is very important to bear in mind.
Professor Mahmoud, thank you very much for that introductory part of the talk. We're going to get into more meat on the bone in just a short moment. Kita akan berehat seketika, dan apabila kembali nanti kita akan terus bincangkan bagaimana sebenarnya untuk anda yang bakal menjadi pemilik perniagaan sendiri, meyakinkan mereka yang ingin melabur dalam perniagaan anda. Adakah semata-mata kita mempunyai plan perniagaan itu mencukupi ataupun tidak? Dan juga bagaimana untuk merangka satu plan perniagaan yang betul-betul bervisi dan mungkin akan menarik minat bukan sahaja para pelabur biasa tetapi juga pihak-pihak institusi kewangan. Jadi jangan ke mana-mana, terus setia bersama kami. We Hear You kembali sebentar lagi. Kembali bersama kami dalam We Hear You. Seterusnya, keuangan memang menjadi masalah. Apabila kita memulakan suatu perniagaan itu, apakah modus operandi untuk kita kendalikan bagi mencapai jumlah pelaburan yang kita perlukan? Adakah kita akan menggunakan duit dalam poket sendiri, kawan, keluarga, ataupun kita akan cuba untuk meyakinkan pelabur ataupun mencapai minat daripada institusi keuangan? Dan bagaimana untuk membayar balik sekiranya kita mendapat sedikit pelaburan ataupun pinjaman daripada institusi keuangan, dan bagaimana strategi untuk mengatur pegangan saham dan sebagainya. Semua ini akan kita bincangkan sebentar lagi. There is a collaboration between SME Bank and also your university, sir. So, Professor, could you shed some light on how this collaboration is being carried out?
Yes, I think what we seek to have, we have reliable partners that they share the same vision and belief in what we do. And SMEs became one of our prominent partners in our venture in Malaysia. Whatever we do in Malaysia is for the people of Malaysia. This is to empower and capacity building of the people. And SMEs Bank, these are in their strategic plan, is in their the heart of what they do, and to empower startups and make them flourish and move them into the next stage is what SMEs Bank is trying to do. And what the way we partnering with SMEs Bank is excellent. I think they tap on our experience and what worked, what didn't work in Switzerland, and they are trying to implement the similar concept in Malaysia. We did one the Swiss Innovation Challenge Sandbox last year, 24, and that was a successful story. It's something, a case that really everybody should be proud, the people of Malaysia should be proud of. The winner team came and visited and pitched in Switzerland, and that was a really successful story. It's a cutting edge. It's what the Malay people deserve to have.
We're looking forward to seeing that story further unfold, of course, with the success of a company and potentially generating, of course, great interest in their products. When a company is first formed and they look out for funding, they reach out to any institutions, banks, perhaps even angel investors and VCs, how do they convince these people to park their money, so to speak, with their brand new company that has no credentials, no track record, just a vision, a dream, and potential?
I think this is what we realized from the lessons that we learned last in 2024. What we realized that there are a gap in this kind of ecosystem process. And this year in 2025, this coming year, what we're planning to do is to combine the different stakeholders and give the startups the opportunity to where they can acquire funding. So it's not about the prize they get, but also about funding mechanisms that either venture capitalists or angel investors or even other mechanism that we are at the moment, and this morning we had a meeting with one of the stakeholders. They are fully on board. International global companies are getting on board on this. The Malaysian government and different agencies are realizing the importance of what we are doing. And this is with the support of SMEs banks. And I think we are very confident that we are completing the circle with the ecosystem. It requires some time. It doesn't happen overnight,
Oh, yeah.
as we have learned from Switzerland, but it just takes time and persistence. But surely, going back to the startups, they have to have a convincing business model.
Of course.
And it's very important to protect investors. So what we need a very solid governance policy.
When we look at Switzerland and what you're famous for, chocolates, watches, and banks. These are the three things that come to mind.
Chocolate first.
It's chocolates first. Yes, definitely, because we have a sweet tooth here in this part of the world, and your chocolates are world famous. There's also perhaps a Swiss Army knife you could throw in there.
Yes.
Yes. How are startups changing this landscape, or are they embracing all these already preconceived success stories of Switzerland into their business portfolio, or are startups in Switzerland starting something new?
I think it's a combination. I think the startups in Malaysia is looking up. They realized that a simple example I could give is Lardach, is the chocolate. We're talking about chocolate. Is I found them in the Kuala Lumpur city center. They are opened and they are fully 100% family-owned business, and they are operating in Malaysia. And I think the Malaysian startups realize that it's doable. We can do it. And if you think about Switzerland, this small country, it's not as big as Malaysia, with a population of 8 to 9 million population. 9 million maximum,
million.
top, with a very diverse cultural background.
Linguistic background as well.
Linguistic backgrounds for languages spoken in Switzerland, with a very flexible labor force. We always attract talents from abroad, so we are flexible, but it's a living country. A classic example, myself living in Switzerland, is just as soon as you have what the country requires, there is no difficulties, there is no complications. But to answer your question again, the startups has to learn from previous experience. So I think the Malay will raise to the challenge. They will do well. We have no doubt about this. The potential you have in Malaysia is outstanding, astonishing. You are number one country in Asia that developing at a pace that could be perceived as very promising. It's just you need the environment to nurture this growth.
Well, thank you for that. That's very. It's very nice to hear from an outside perspective looking in about the potential of our country. Oftentimes we doubt ourselves. I would say that because there's also a lot of negativity being pushed and peddled as to why we cannot succeed, as to why we cannot push boundaries, and sometimes we believe that. I don't think that is something that's good in a sense, but I do believe that hearing these outside perspectives about our own successes are sometimes stories that we need to hear. So when it comes to a Malaysian startup, which industry do you think we have a niche in that we should focus our attention on? Or can it just be a general sort of startup playing field? We have had successes as a country in the SME sector, semiconductor sector, and we're one of the pioneers in this region when it comes to having our own hub for semiconductors. Do you think startups should gravitate towards this already existing success story, or should they try their hand in new things?
I think we should not focus on one industry. We shouldn't also direct all the resources on one industry. I think diversity is a very important aspect of success. I think if you're talking about semiconductors, one of the global player will be on board for 2025 Swiss Innovation Challenge semiconductors. I would like to remain the names kind of anonymous at the moment, but it will be a surprise for the next Swiss Innovation Challenge. But I don't think that we should focus on industry specific.
Okay.
I think we should give the young generation the freedom to do the best they can in what they believe in. And that's where the success comes from. The success comes from when you believe in something. You shouldn't follow just a trend because this trend is happening, but you should believe in the trend if you're going to follow that trend. So if you believe in something else, there's lots of opportunity. In life, we need so many things. We don't want only semiconductors. We don't want only artificial intelligence applications. Still, we need to make sure that sustainability in the heart of what startups are doing. And that's very important. This is a very important topic. And what we're trying to do is for all startups to keep the sustainability aspect in the core heart of what they're doing and understanding and achieve the UN sustainability, the SDGs, the 17 SDGs, which is Sustainability Development Goals, in their activities and strategic plan.
I think it's very important. That's a very important piece of advice, because when Malaysian startups see a trend, they jump on it. I don't know if you noticed, but we have perhaps the most number of startups in bubble tea in the region.
Yeah.
We have bubble tea all over the place. And it's generically basically the same taste, I'm sorry to say, to all our bubble tea SMEs out there. But it's a similar concept. Tea with very sugary bubbles added. So those concepts are, I think they're just a fad, a trend, and only the strong will survive. The ones that are able to sustain the trend. There were also hipster cafe trends. I think that's still an ongoing thing. It's all over as well. But I'm not sure if when a startup starts their plan to first begin, they already have this thought about how they're going to expand and scale. I don't really know if that should be at the heart of their plan, or should they just first start that one entity and then figure out about scalability. What do you think a startup should do?
I think the startup should always find the need for the market. So what is needed in the market? To
Definitely
fill the gap,
not bubble
to bridge the gap. To bridge the gap. But in human nature, we like to copy a successful story.
Oh, yeah.
So if you did bubble tea, and I found it interesting, and you're making money because you start driving a new car, you're having a new house, I will start a bubble tea tomorrow. So it's because I would know that after tomorrow I will have a car, I will have a house. And that's human nature.
Right.
But it's not about starting the bubble tea. It's more about how much can you innovate in the bubble tea as well. And this is what differentiates a successful startup or successful business from other businesses, that they just copy and cap themselves at that level. So innovation, are you the first one to innovate into the market? And that's very important. Is innovation in the heart of what you do? Or am I coming back? Because we go through a cycle of fashion in our food industry, in our clothing industry, in whatever we do, it's a fashion of things. So the bubble tea is a fashion, but the fashion will go if you don't innovate. So if you create something new, the fashion will disappear after 2 years or 3 years because people will get bored of bubble tea.
Oh yeah, that doesn't mean you should start bubble coffee though. So I mean, just to put it out there, I think innovation will be in line with the technological capabilities of the time. When people were on roller skates, for example, there were roller skate rings that were created to support that. Today, rollerblading, you can do it in parks, you can do it anywhere on any surface. So there's a shift in consumer behavior there. When it comes to technology and how important it is to drive innovation, how quick should an organization be to adapt said change? We've seen examples of relics that no longer able to change. They're too big, and they can't really make the pivot in time, and they miss the wave. Those names are all over the place. But when a startup is a startup, it's new, it's agile, it's able to adapt. How quickly should they be able to shift and jump onto a new technological trend that definitely will help their business?
Definitely, I think I agree with you. A small company is always much more agile in changing and swapping and embarking on new trend of technology. Bigger company, you are moving. I always describe it. You're moving like a tanker. It's just like it takes time to maneuver and take a decision, because the decision makers are really, it has to go to the top to decide. I think all in all, I think it's very important is what we have experienced in Switzerland is education is an excellent platform for keeping innovation in the heart of the mind of the young population. So the new labor force have the innovation in their heart. They have been taught not just to follow, copy and paste, and to innovate. So technology, it will continue evolving. As we speak, things are developing. But how much can you use out of this technology to develop your own business? It's important to be defined by individual cases. And that's important.
Let's go back to the entity that you started, the business entity that you began, and you successfully managed to exit. This is a strategy in its own right. Was that the theory that you applied to your own business? Did you already plan the exit when you started the business, or was that something that happened naturally? Because we started off talking about money, and money is always one of the most important, if not the most important motivators for any business. You have to make a profit. But eventually, of course, the owners have to set a trajectory for the business. Are we going to stay in business because we want to reach buyout phase, or are we going to stay in business forever and pass this down to the next generation?
Yeah.
So when did you come to the realization that, okay, it's time to exit? Was this at the beginning of the business, or was it something that happened? And could you share some of your learning curves that you went through in your successful exit from that business that, well, I'm sure is something that you're still very proud of to today?
I think exactly. I think it wasn't in the beginning when we started the business we decided to exit. No, that wasn't our intention. And when we started the business itself, we were super busy in making it work. Especially when you start a business, the cash flow is one of the most important elements in survivalship. And what we did is that within 7 years, we were expanding to 27 countries, exporting our products. So our products became an icon. But the selling idea came from an article I published in a journal that the venture capitalist has read and approached me personally. Okay. And that was the starting point of start talking about selling the business.
So when you approach the sale, because I want to get into some a little bit of nitty gritty, because I want our audience to understand that this is possible. This is possible with your business. Talk to us a bit about how you approach the sale. Did they first approach you and offer to buy a certain percentage of the company, or was it like an investment? What was the process like?
The process was sending an email saying, can we have a coffee? That's the email, literally. Can we have a coffee? We are a venture capitalist, and can we have a coffee? And my reply was, yes, of course, you're most welcome. But what is it about? Could you tell us more? And they said, could we have a coffee and start talking? So when they came, and we, of course, our doors always open. Having the Middle Eastern culture is that we welcoming everybody. They sat and they said, could we support you with raising funds? And we said, no, we are organically kind of growing. They said, okay, would you like to sell shares of the business? And we said, no, it's a family-owned business, so we will keep it as it is. And they said, okay, would you like to sell the whole business? And this is where it triggered. And to be honest, the starting point was, could you make an evaluation out of our curiosity, what is the business is all about? And that was a learning curve for us. That the experience we went through, the sales as a whole, it took about 3 years to complete a whole management buyout. And that was a whole experience separate than the experience of starting a business to grow it to the third largest manufacturing food packaging company in Europe.
Well, that is the kind of success story that we would like to emulate here in Malaysia. I'm not sure if every company that starts wants to be unicorn, but I'm sure they want to have some kind of success that they can be proud of. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to dive a little bit more into that success. Kita akan kembali bincangkan sedikit tentang konsep kejayaan yang diinginkan oleh setiap ahli perniagaan, setiap syarikat pemula yang baru berkecimpung di pasaran. Apakah hala tuju yang ingin dirangka oleh setiap pemula, dan di mana agaknya kesudahan perniagaan anda? Adakah anda akan membawa perniagaan ini untuk generasi yang berikutnya, ataupun adakah anda akan cuba menjual perniagaan itu untuk mencapai tahap keuntungan yang bermanfaat kepada sisi keluarga, seperti mana yang telah lakukan oleh Prof Mahmud dalam perniagaannya secara peribadi. Jangan ke mana-mana, We Hear You akan kembali sebentar nanti. Kembali bersama kami dalam We Hear You, kita membincangkan soal syarikat pemula, bagaimana untuk sebenarnya mencari visi hala tujuan yang sepatutnya untuk syarikat-syarikat pemula, dan bagaimana untuk mencapai sumber keuangan, dan seterusnya juga plan untuk anda meneruskan perniagaan, sama ada anda ingin menjual perniagaan tersebut ataupun ingin menurunkan kepada generasi seterusnya. Jadi ini semua adalah perangkaan yang diperlukan dalam minda setiap syarikat pemula sebelum berkecimpung dalam dunia perniagaan. Seterusnya kita ingin bincangkan tentang masa hadapan. Let's talk about the future. We have, of course, still Professor Mahmoud joining us on the program. What is the future for startups and innovation?
Innovation.
Innovation is the future.
Innovation is the future. I think we have responsibility for the environment, and we have to innovate to meet what I mentioned earlier on, the 17 SDGs, the Swiss Development Goals that's set up by the UN. Mm-hmm. I think this is the future is bright for our startup companies. There is a lot to do in order to meet the milestones. The future is bright for the Malay startups. Mm-hmm. This is very important. You have a young, educated population. The labor force are very educated and diverse, and this is very important to bear in mind. Mm-hmm. But the future is bright. I would like to say there is a lot to be done. Innovation should be the heart of what we do, and not to forget our responsibility for the environment. Mm-hmm. So sustainability is one of the pillars that we should build our success on. Mm-hmm. And of course, sustainability could be defined based on the triple bottom lines kind of system, that we have a responsibility towards the company profitability, towards the people that involve in the business, and also the planets we live in. Mm-hmm. So we shouldn't abuse our natural resources. We should always look at the technical economies of using our resources. We don't overuse our resources, but we should use it in moderation. We shouldn't waste food. Food scarcity is becoming very important and a prominent topic in the agenda globally. And also our water scarcity is very important. I know you have in Malaysia lots of rain, which is you are blessed with this, but that doesn't mean there is other parts of the globe, they have lots of droughts, and we should try to find solutions for all of this, and that comes from innovation. So the future is innovation.
Mm-hmm. We have a new ministry set up, the Ministry of energy transition and energy and water transition and transformation. So basically, the focus of that industry, of that ministry, Petra, is on what you mentioned, water management, and how we're going to be looking at more sustainable sources of energy to power the country. And Malaysia is on track, I believe, ahead of many countries in the region. We have achieved 43% of the Sustainable Development Goals. So I think we're there from a country perspective. And whether it trickles down to the startup, I am not sure just yet. Because as I mentioned, the surplus of bubble tea startups is
Yeah.
indicative that
Yeah.
we're following trends. But nevertheless, there are startups that are very niche and have come out of fintech.
Yeah.
That we have startups in renewable energy, and we also have startups in areas that have been very traditional, like agriculture, that are helping farmers to innovate the way crops are grown, especially in the oil palm plantations. So these are startups that are really growing and are helping traditional economies as well achieve new success heights. When it comes to how you have managed to do this in Switzerland, in terms of not only inculcating the culture of innovation, but also driving innovation forward from a government standpoint, because that's what our government aspires to do. Under the leadership of the current Prime Minister, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim, innovation is at the heart of everything he says and does. So, how has the Swiss government inspired this change within its populace and also helped that sort of trickle down into startups and companies?
Yeah. I think Switzerland is a unique country. It's a lovely country. It's a bit cold, but still, it's a unique country in their policy. What most of the decisions are taking based on shared responsibilities. And that cultivates innovation, that really support innovation. So the outcome of whatever decisions is collective and accepted by everybody. So at each and single level, in the cities, in the federal level, in the canton level, we start with the local community to decide what's next. Then we go to the canton level, what's next, and then it goes into the federal level. And that's unique in Switzerland in comparison to anywhere else in the world. And each canton provide their own supporting mechanism and ecosystem for startups. And that helps companies to locate themselves in each county. So an example, if you are based in Basel, the support you get from the government or from the canton is different, not better or not worse than the support you get in Zurich. Because each canton, they have their own ecosystem. And that's innovative way in supporting and attracting. For example, in Basel, we attract pharmaceutical companies. We are the hub of the pharma industry in the world. Whereas if you talk, as soon as you mention Zurich, you're talking about banking system.
Yep.
And that's innovative way in the policy system of the country. And that came over the 400 years that Switzerland existed.
Have
It
400
takes time. No, but still, I think you are on the track. And I think perseverance and persistence in what you do is important. You should believe in what you do. I know as a humankind, we sometimes doubt ourselves and abilities in what we do. But that doesn't mean what we're doing is not good. That means that's a critical evaluation system that keep us thinking about, have we done this right or wrong? How could we improve it? So critical self-evaluation is a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Well, this is going to be the only question on this area. We're focused on startups, but I want to delve a little bit into government policy, because in Malaysia, we are a young democracy. We are recently experiencing changes in government for the first time. I mean, it is new to us. We've had a political party that ruled the country for the longest period of time, and then there was a shift, and we've had for different governments since then.
Yeah.
So my question would be, these policies that you're talking about in terms of how the government supports various startups within the cantons
Yeah.
in Switzerland, does it change or evolve with the different government in place?
The beauty of Switzerland that presidents change and government cabinet change, and we don't know about it. We don't know about it. So a new president comes to take place, and we
Right.
don't know that they've changed unless we hear it in the news. So the president doesn't have any influence, direct influence on the canton. So as I said, it's a shared responsibility. It's a shared decision. So the people in the community decide and vote for the policy. So it's not people in power will impose the policy on the people. No, the people will vote for different policies, and that is a bottom-up approach instead of top-down approach. And that's it works in Switzerland. It's not necessarily that works everywhere else, though.
Well, that's true. That's true. And I do believe that education plays a big role in how that works. People need to know about the policies that they're voting for. They need to be educated on how they can work or not work for their respective localized areas. I think that's a beautiful concept. I do think we could explore that here in Malaysia. We're a growing democracy, and as you mentioned, young population. We're getting diversely educated, so I do hope that that becomes something we can aspire to. Let's go back to startups and how you would like to see the future of startups. Some startups are meant to grow. They have huge potential. They have a great value proposition for the market, and therefore they capture market shares. They become essential to any economy. For instance, the e-hailing startups, when they started out, nobody knew we needed that service, and today everyone uses them. So some startups are meant to grow in that direction, but some startups sadly will fail. For those startups that fail, what do you propose they do? Because they've already put all the same amount of effort that any successful startup would have put. But however, their value proposition did not reach the market or fell short somewhere, and eventually they had to close things down. What are your key takeaways for failures and how people can learn from them?
I think failures could be defined in many ways and different definitions, but I think giving up is not an option for startups. This is my advice. I think if you honestly and seriously, and you are honest with yourself, you believe in your idea, if it didn't succeed the first time, take the learnings and try again. Because failures is not an option. Failures is just probably the circumstances wasn't right. The ecosystem didn't support your initiatives. At the moment, we are working with SME banks on developing an ecosystem that supports startups, because any startup is a successful story. They all winners. Sometimes in the Swiss Innovation Challenge competition, we have to choose a winner. But in our view, they all winners because they all has done the milestones. They worked hard to bring their ideas to that level that we evaluated. So they all winners. But a decision sometimes is very hard as a jury member of the Swiss Innovation Challenge. After, when the presentation is finished, we sit and take the voting, and then we have to spend another hours trying to say who the winners are, even though the number speaks for itself. But sometimes they are so close to each other with a very fine line, or they overlap with each other. And this is what I would say. I would say it's they all winners. Just if you fail, that's not a failure. I would like to say, what have you learned from your failure? Could you try again?
Absolutely. Testing and measuring, I guess, is a big part of that.
Exactly.
So from the get-go, test and measure, make sure you've kept track of what worked and what didn't. Any final, perhaps, thoughts on the startup culture in Malaysia? I don't think we have a culture yet around startups. We have trends, and we certainly are aspiring to become a nation where startup is at the heart of our business culture. But what can you say about that? How can we continue to grow and become a very supportive environment for startups within this country?
This is very important. This is a discussion we had today, this morning, with government stakeholders. And what we would like to do, what we did in the Swiss Innovation Challenge in 2024, we are raising the bar with the help of SMEs Bank to go to another level higher, learning from experience what startups challenges are. We collecting data about all the participants, and what we would like to propose with the help of other agencies, government agencies, and closing the loop and the funding and everything, we would like to, in probably a year or 2 or 3, propose a white paper and make an informed policy maker recommendation to the government in supporting the whole startups, because in our view as experts, they're all winners. They are all winners, but sometimes you have to take a decision, and that very fine line doesn't make you, if you between the winner and not winner, doesn't make you are a loser, but a decision has to be made. We don't have presents to all of them and gifts, but we have to make a decision.
And we have handshakes.
Exactly.
To be given all
Exactly.
around. Thank you so much, Professor Mahmoud, for joining us on
Thank
the
you very
program.
much for
It's been
having
a
me.
pleasure speaking to you. Dan saya berharap bahawa anda juga telah banyak belajar daripada pengalaman-pengalaman yang dikongsikan oleh Profesor Mahmoud dalam perjalanan peribadi beliau mencapai kejayaan dalam menjadi seorang ahli perniagaan dan juga kekal sebagai seorang tokoh akademik yang banyak membantu syarikat-syarikat pemula di Switzerland. Jadi dengan itu kita akhiri episod kali ini dengan mengucapkan selamat berjaya kepada semua syarikat pemula di luar sana yang baru berkecimpung dalam bidang yang diceburi. Semoga anda mencapai sukses yang diinginkan, dan dengan itu kita sudahi dengan Assalamualaikum sehingga kita berjumpa lagi dalam We Hear You.